what went into the decision to let Joe go?
Yeah, Daniel, first off, Joe and Shane are really good coaches, and I want to thank them for everything that they helped us accomplish the last 2 years, but just felt like we needed to make changes to the offense and the vision for the way I have us playing on that side of the football, and I think there's a different gear that we can get to as a football team. Definitely not an easy decision because they did a really quality job for 2 years, but I think that we can make improvements on that side of the football, and that's where we're going to have our focus moving forward.
Why now? Because last year, after the season, we talked about creating a system for Justin. You said that, we got it right. I know we got it right. What changed over this year, and why now? Why make this decision now?
Yeah, I think there's a different level that we need to play at offensively, particularly at the line of scrimmage in the run game, and having the marriage of the run and the pass, creating more explosions on early downs. And I think there's just a style of play that's still out there for us. And I think that we made improvements each season and towards heading where I think we can ultimately go as a football team. And again, these aren't easy decisions, but I think you're not trying to stay in a certain place. You're always trying to take your game to a different level, and that's what it's about, is us creating that optimum level that I know that our team can get to offensively. And I think we've played really quality football for 2 years, but in terms of us being able to compete for Super Bowls and ultimately be as good as we can be, I think there's another gear that we can get to.
Are you looking for
speculation about the status of your job going into the final week, going into the playoffs? Did you ever feel like your job was truly on the line?
No, Lindsay, I have a lot of confidence in the way we've done things for 2 years. I have a lot of confidence what I see on the football field week in and week out. I know the type of improvements that we've been able to make as a football team since I've been here. And I think the way that we finished the season, the way we finished down the stretch, I think shows you all the things that we're excited about moving forward. I know that the culture that we have in our locker room, I know the quality of the product on the field, and I also know the capacity we have to grow. And we have all these things in place where, we made tremendous improvement from year 1 to year 2, and now from year 2 to year 3 we expect to make those same types of improvements. But I was really proud of the season that we had, especially with all the challenges that were happening throughout, and I felt like the way we finished the season said a lot about the guys in our locker room.
Coach, did it really frustrate you?
Do you hear all that kind of speculation going on as you guys are going into the playoffs?
I mean, I think the NFL, the nature of the NFL, you understand the way it is, and that there's always going to be speculation when, other people may not be thinking you're having the success that they think you should have. But I think internally what matters is the way your players, your coaches, your personnel department, your ownership, the way they feel, because they're with you on a day-to-day basis. And they're ultimately the ones who know who you are and what you're about. And that's what gives me a lot of confidence in our situation here.
Coach, did it anger you to hear all this speculation about your position?
No, Jim. Like I said, I've been in sports my whole life, and since I was a little kid, this is all I ever wanted to do. So I know when you get to this level that there's an expectation of performance, and that's what drives you as a competitor. So what I love is that our fan base and the people in the NFL, that there is that type of scrutiny on our team, because I think that we've created a set of expectations for our football team that I'm proud of. I think we continue to increase that standard every time we go out. So again, I have a lot of confidence in my game, a lot of confidence in our team and our organization and where it can go, and that's where our focus is going to be moving forward.
What are you looking for in an offensive coordinator? Is it a veteran who's had experience, head coaching experience, and been a coordinator for a while, or is it maybe somebody who's new and giving somebody a chance?
Yeah, I think you're looking for leadership, number one. You're looking for someone that can really connect the group and get them to play a certain type of way. And I think that's where it starts, and that comes from young guys, it comes from medium guys, older guys, it doesn't matter, but it really starts with leadership, and I think bringing out the style of play that we want to have as a football team, because it's about a football team in all 3 phases playing a certain style, and that's what I'm really after in terms of leading a group and connecting it. And then, in terms of what that looks like is, I think the offenses that I think are the most challenging to defend, and the people who have been here with me are the ones that put a lot of pressure on you every snap in terms of marrying the run game to the pass game, putting a lot of pressure on you with personnel groupings, pace, motion and being able to get the explosions consistently. And I think that that's what I believe in. I want to have an offense that mirrors our defense. Because I think that those are the types of organizations, those are the type of football teams who are consistent, game in and game out, season in and season out, and we're going to start that process here shortly.
Will Justin have input on that position?
Yeah, Lindsay, I mean, everything that we do in the program, we try to communicate with our players. And so, I mean, certainly, you know, just like when I first got here, shaping an offense, it's going to go through him. And when I talk about him being the system, you know, I mean it. You know, what you want to be able to do is he has now 3 years of NFL experience to bank on. There's a lot of plays. And as the head coach here for 2 years, you know, we're going to try and keep a lot of that consistent for him where we can. And that's what I mean. And, you know, as a head coach with an offensive background, that's the position I played. What we're going to continue to do throughout the course of his career is do that for him so that we can maximize him as a player. And that's what these moves are about, is maximizing him as a player and continuing to challenge and grow his game with his teammates and ultimately forming a team that can consistently compete for world championships.
You mentioned a specific style of offense. Is it fair to say you're going to be looking into the, you know, Kyle Sean tree of offense for your coordinator?
I think it's fair to say that the experiences that I have, that's a fair assessment of the style of play. Because that's the offense that I believe in. That's the thing that when I came here, that's kind of how we got this off the ground. I think in terms of the passing game, that's what we've been able to do at a high level for the last 2 years, is throw the football. But I think to be more explosive, you have to be able to run the football more consistently and put more pressure on people. So again, you know, what we want to do is cast a net where we find the best person to lead our offense and to ultimately be a part of our team. And connect all phases to one another, and that's what I'm after.
You've already fired 3 coaches. Should we expect more movement and more shakeup with the coaching staff?
Well, I think the nature of coaching is things are always fluid. You know, I think you know, even after the Super Bowl, there's a lot of things that go on. So that's just kind of the nature of coaching. And there's going to be a lot of people who are after our coaches, just like last year with so many, you know, head coach openings. There's going to be a lot of transition. That's the nature of it. So I would expect, you know, more changes. But the nature of those changes, you know, I'm not positive.
In your communications with Justin so far, what have been your takeaways about what he needs to take this offense another step forward?
Well, I thought he took a huge step forward this year as a player. I thought this season, I think, really brought out the best in him as a player in terms of the challenges from an injury standpoint, both up front and at his skill positions. And I thought you were really able to discover a lot of the intangibles that make him so special. I think for his first 2 years, I think people talk about the tangible, what they can see, kind of the output production, or, you know, the style of some of these throws that he can make. But what he really showed were the intangibles that I think make him one of the top players in the NFL. And I think that him being able to lead our offense to kind of will us down the stretch to a playoff appearance, I think show you all the growth that he has. You know, I think since he's coming to the NFL, he's number 1 or number 2 in most fourth quarter comebacks. And I think, you know, he's just continuing to grow as a player, as a leader on this football team. And, you know, this year I thought really showcased to me, you know, why he's so special, because he had to play under circumstances that aren't ideal, and he was still able to play at a premium level.
Just going back to the style of offense for a second, you know, you mentioned, you know, the Kyle Sean tree is something that you might be looking for. Why then move on from Shane? Because you had brought Shane from Kyle's staff to sort of bring those types of ideas to your offense. So why then move on from Shane?
Well, he's not the only guy in our staff, our offensive coaching staff. But it's just, you know, to me, when you're looking for direction, like I said, you're looking for leadership, and then you're looking for alignment, you know, within your coaching staff. And so that's important to get. And again, these decisions aren't easy. They're the toughest that you have to go through as a head coach. And like I said, I appreciate those guys for helping us get this program off the ground. And giving us a chance to be one of the top teams in the league. But, you know, like I said, there's just a different level that I think that we can get to, and that's where we're going to try and head here shortly.
Brandon, is there anything that you can tell us about your first conversation with ownership after the loss, when you knew you weren't going to be going anywhere?
Well, I meet with our ownership daily and weekly, And then certainly after the season, last year I only have 1 year to compare it to, but you have an end of the season review and kind of a reflection, debrief, and assessment, and then then you're kind of charting the course for your next moves in the days and weeks to come. So it's the meetings that we always have, and when I talk about alignment, there's no better alignment that I have than with the Spanos family, with Dean, John, and AG. That's where it all starts, and myself and Tom, Ed McGuire, our coaching staff. I think that's the strength of our team, is the alignment within our team, and I'm excited to get our off-season process started.
Is your intention to still call the plays in 2023 for the defense?
Yes.
Any of the other assistants that have you told won't be back?
Yeah, Jeff, we're still, we had our coaching exit meetings this week, and like I said, the nature of coaching is just there's a lot of transition right now. There's a lot of jobs that are taking shape right now, so our staff is probably not going to be the same as it was at the beginning of the season, and you're going to see people try to grab some of our coaches, I'm sure, and you guys will be updated if and when those moves happen.
A lot of teams right now looking for offensive coordinator. Are you kind of want to accelerate this to try to get somebody, just because there's a lot of buyers out there right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we have one of the top jobs in the league, and so we're going to be thorough with our process. There's not a rush to do anything, because we want to make sure that you hire the best coach. And, 3 years ago, there was a outside linebacker coach that only had 3 years of NFL experience that became a defensive coordinator, and, I was that guy that no one knew about. And what you got to do is you got to go through a process to discover, people like that. And so, like I said, good coaches come in all shapes and sizes, all levels of experience. And what we're going to try and do is find the type of coaching staff that fits me, our players, and our organization.
Brandon, we've all spent a lot of time over the last few days and Saturday night interacting with the fan base, and I think it's fair to say that there's an immense amount of frustration there. I think they see what Justin does and what he's capable of, and I think it's going to be different. They see what you say about doing things differently, and then they see what happened Saturday night, where you have a 27-point lead, and it feels really familiar to them. So what's your message to the fan base in terms of this being different and building towards something that this organization hasn't done?
Yeah, well, I think we definitely improved as a franchise this season. We took a step as a franchise, and we earned ourselves a spot in the tournament. And, I think I'm as frustrated as anybody that's a Chargers fan over what happened, because there's no one that's investing as much as we are in what happened. And the first half of that football game, I think you saw the very best of our team. And then the second half, you saw the places that we need to improve. But since I've been the head coach, I've been the head coach for 25 games. 25. And that is the first time that a lead like that, all right, has happened, and we're the team over 2 years that have come back. We're the ones that have made the comebacks. We're the ones this season that had to fight to come back, to scrap. And so when I say it's different, it is different, because if it were the same, then we wouldn't have made the postseason. We wouldn't have, at 6-6, won 4 consecutive games to earn the top wild card spot. There is progress being made within our football team, and you can see it, because the team that we have right now is a much different team than we had a year ago. And so what I would tell the fans is that I'm just as disappointed as they are, but I'm really excited to get this process started, because just like last year when we made a lot of big improvements in our football team that gave us this chance to compete for a championship, I know that if we keep making that type of progress, then we'll consistently be there at the end.
Brandon, you feel that you were out-coached by Peterson, and how much did that lead to the loss?
Oh, Bill, I thought it was a tight game. I thought that for a half, I wouldn't say that was the case for a half. I think at the end of the game, that team that we were playing showed a lot of fight, a lot of resilience. I thought it was a high-quality game against two teams that are both young and hungry. And so I thought it was just a high-level game all the way around. And so I think Doug's an outstanding coach, and I know that we were coaching at a high level, and hopefully we're going to get another chance at those guys.
Were there things you could have done differently, you personally, in the second half to prevent this?
Yeah, Bill. I mean, there's so many things in the second half of that game in all 3 phases. It was one of those things, and I think you guys who were watching it, it was unique in the fact that there weren't these catastrophic big plays that kind of led to you giving away a lead. We didn't turn the football over. We weren't giving up these, killer, huge, big plays. We gave up one, long pass, and that was it. There weren't any big special teams errors. I know we missed a kick, but we just didn't execute at a high enough level in the second half. And then when it got tight and their crowd got into it, it became a dogfight. So I think in all three phases, Bill, we just didn't quite execute at a high enough level. I thought that there were some penalties in the game that really swung the momentum of the game in the second half. And we just didn't make enough winning plays, and that starts with me in all three phases. I needed to coach better in all three phases in order to help us finish that game, and I didn't do a good enough job of that. And I take full responsibility. And like I said, that's where, you got to go after a game like that, is you got to take full ownership for what happened, and I'm the one who's responsible for it. And like I said, I'm proud that we were able to get a chance to compete, and I thought that first half shows you what our team has inside of it, and the second half shows where we need to improve.
Brandon, why did you pick up Bosa's helmet?
Because it was on the ground in front of me. And, I saw a player that was having a tough moment. And it's the same way when Jalen Ramsey had a tough moment in a playoff game. You're there for your player. And I would do it over again. And he slammed it down again. And I picked it up again and gave it to him. And so, you want to be there when your guys are going through a tough moment, and that was a tough one for him. And I would do the same thing again.
Did he address that with you at all afterwards?
Yeah, as only Joey could. Just when, obviously he feels bad about losing his composure and what kind of happened as a result of it, because, it hurt us. And we got to have poise in moments like that. That's what we talk a lot about, is having your best when your best is required. But, Joey cares a lot, and, we're going to learn from that. And, I think he holds himself to a high standard, and, I got to continue to keep holding him to a high standard. So.
In that situation, there could be some thought outside that that's a player run amok, a program out of control. How would you answer that accusation that that's not a good
I think Joey Bosa had a really significant groin injury with major surgery, and he competed really hard to get himself back, and sacrificed a lot for his teammates to get back out there. And I know that anyone who knows Joey knows that he came in and had a dominant training camp and a completely renewed player through 2 games. I thought was playing as high of a level as any rusher in the game. And so anyone that knows our football team knows that what you just said isn't true, that our locker room is tight, that we made improvements in every way, and that the culture of our team is as strong as it's ever been since I've been here. And that's what I saw after the game, that the next day is that, as compared to a year ago, just how much tighter our locker room is. And, and that's why it was so disappointing, because I know that maybe dissimilar to last year, I thought this team felt like it could win a world championship. And, I think that that's a really positive thing. And now we just got to get our minds engineered towards what's next, and making the improvements that we need to make.
What are some of the lessons you learned that will make you a better coach and your team a better team next year?
Oh, Jim, it's so high level. We don't have enough time in this press conference. Everything I do as a leader is to try and start with myself, and there's so many things that go into being a coach. And, it starts to me with relationships and making sure that you're onboarding the right people, and that you continue to improve and to grow and to hold people to that high standard. And you got to live that mission. They got to see that through you. And that's what I try to do is be the same guy, be consistent, people know the type of competitor I am, and be able to see me making improvements in the areas that I need to make. And, our players, our coaches, you guys, the improvement I made from my first year to my second year. You're able to see it visibly. I don't need to tell you the improvements I made. Hopefully I can show it. And so I know that that's something that I have to continue to do in order to be as good as I can be in my role. And that's something all of our players know, is that, this doesn't, this means more to me than anything in the world. And, like I said, I'm excited to bounce back, and to really attack this offseason and compete at a high level.
What changed
Going
about
back to the Joey Bosa topic, something he did say when he was putting out his locker was that at Ohio State, when he played, they had kind of a lose mentality. And I understand you're still trying to build a culture here, but collective sense that when something goes wrong, like it did Saturday, that it's, oh gosh, what's happening, and that he's felt that. How do you get this group or this organization, whatever it is, like how do you get them past that?
Well, when Joey got to Ohio State, that wasn't there. You know, like Ohio State wasn't always that way, okay, because I'm from Ohio. So things take time, you know, to build. When Jim Tressel first got to Ohio State, his way wasn't just ingrained there. You know, it took time for Tress to get it the way he wanted it, like he had at Youngstown. And then, you know, when Urban Meyer got there, there was a lot of good elements in place because of Tress, but you know, things take some time, and you got to see the tangible evidence, you know, that things are improving, which is what I think has happened here. You know, over the course of this season, we wouldn't have made the playoffs if that way of thinking was true, because when we got completely cleaned out with our football team, we could have been a non-playoff team. We could have been like a lot of other teams in the league that end up with, you know, a substandard record where where you feel like you're underachieving or you underperformed. And I felt like we overperformed based on what had happened in our circumstances. I felt like, you know, at the end of the season when we were 6-6, and that season could have gone a couple of different directions when you're playing two playoff teams, I felt like our team really rose to the occasion and finished, you know, 4 straight wins to get us into the playoffs. So, you know, I think what you got to continue to do, Lindsay, is what we did this year, is continue to bring in people that have those intangibles, that come from the places, you know, that know what it takes. And then the people that you have in your building that have been with you from the beginning that you want to build with, you bring that all together and you're going to have something special. And that's what's happening here. And again, it's something that it does take some time, but as long as you're doing it with the right people, which is what we have here, you know, I know that that won't be the case.
What, if anything, changed about your fourth down decision-making this year compared to last year?
Our team was completely different. So that, as I mentioned, my first year, how you play is going to be a product of who you have week to week, game to game. And I thought that, you know, our aggressiveness isn't going to change in terms of how we feel about, you know, our quarterback and, you know, that mindset of being fearless and putting pressure on people. But our team was much different this year. We had a lot different makeup of our team, offensively, defensively, in the kicking game. And I think, you know, from year 1 to year 2, our special teams improved significantly. You know, last year, you know, to this year, it's one of the biggest improvements that we made on our football team. I think we finished 6th in the NFL in overall special teams. We had outstanding kicker, outstanding punter, led the league in fewest amount of return yards. And I think that points and field position were a big strength of our football team this year, our punt returner. So, you know, and then when you have the type of attrition offensively that we had out wide and in your O-line, then that's going to affect how you do things. And so we're never going to shy away from a big moment, but we also want to make sure that, you know, that we're wise, and that's not going to change as long as I'm here.
How far away? Oh, go ahead.
What have the past few days been like for you? Obviously, you've been busy, but I mean, just kind of absorbing the experience.
Yeah, that's the right word, is you have to absorb a lot, you know, after a loss like that. The finality of the NFL, unless you're the last one standing, is really tough, you know, and that's part of sports. And it doesn't matter if it's the NFL or any other level. Your last game, is, if you don't win at all, is always really tough, because then immediately you have to say goodbye to a lot of people. You got to make sure that you unpack the season and treat people with the respect that they've earned. So you got to start with your players, and then you go with your coaching staff, and you're talking throughout the organization. You know, we talk to you guys, and I think it's bittersweet because you grow a lot from these meetings. You learn a lot, which is energizing, but at the same time, it's taken a lot from you because you know what you just put into this thing. So all that's kind of happening at the same time, and then you got to make tough decisions moving forward, and that's the job. And you love all of it. So, you know, where I'm at is, you know, moving forward for this team and making sure that, you know, every day that we're here, we're getting closer to our ultimate goal of being world champions.
You mentioned a few times that you want to see improvement in the running game.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we can talk about the injuries that you had up front, whether it was at tight ends, you know, Corey being in and out, you know, Sean going down. Were there deeper issues in the run game from a coaching preparation perspective that prevented you guys from being able to run the ball effectively?
Yeah, Dan, I think the issues that you just mentioned are real in terms of getting the continuity of who's out there. I think anytime you don't have the chemistry, within your personnel, it's going to be challenging to formulate that identity that I think is really important in any part of your program, but especially at the line of scrimmage. If you want to be a line of scrimmage team, you want to have an identity in how you run the football, or hey, protect the quarterback, or throw the football, stop the run, etc. So I think that was challenging from a personnel perspective, but I think that for me, it's getting back to the technique and the fundamentals and the mindset of how we want to do things, and I think that we can definitely improve in that area, for next season.
Eligible for a contract extension. Have those discussions began with his representatives?
I think, Lindsay, that's going to be a big topic, in the off season. Is you're smiling there. So I think we all know how we feel about Justin, and I know that those conversations will take place in the right space and time. We've got really good relationships with his team, and I'm confident that Justin Herbert's going to be a Charger for a long time.
I asked you this during the season, just going back to the run game. Frank Smith was the run game coordinator. He leaves to go to Miami. How big of a loss was he in terms of that identity that you're talking about from the technique standpoint, from a fundamental standpoint?
Well, Frank's an outstanding coach. You see what he did there in Miami with Mike. But I think, again, there's a lot of factors that go into your production, and sometimes it's what is perceived isn't what's real. But I think just more than anything, I think for me and the vision that we have for this team and for our offense is committing to a style of play. And I think style of play is your technique first, that's where it starts in the fundamentals of the position. And then you get to the scheme, and then you got to have the personnel to go do it. And so, these players, that's what they want. That's what they crave, no matter what side of the football is. And that's what I want to establish moving forward is that style of play, especially in the run game.
Brandon, for all the talk about offense, your defense still finished 20th with a lot of off-season signings. What has to change in that area, not only maybe in scheme, but in coaching?
No, I think that down the stretch, those last 6 games, we were the #1 defense in the NFL that allowed us to get into the tournament. And I thought you measure yourself on how you're playing against the best people, in the NFL. And, certainly when we played Miami and how we played against San Fran and Kansas City, I think you saw at the beginning of the year when we had our full team in those first 2 games, what that looked like. And then, in that next stretch where, you kind of get cleaned out, I thought we made a lot of adjustments that allowed us to hang in there and play, well enough to give us a chance to win. And then I thought when things settled down at the end of the season, we really were playing at a high level and the way that we expect to play with the standard of performance that we expect. So I thought there were a lot of good takeaways from the way we finished the season. We got contributions from a lot of guys, thought we developed guys well. And I think, with as many new guys as we brought in the offseason defensively, I'm excited for them to get a full offseason together because I would expect, that level to improve in a big way. But I think defensively, we're headed in the right direction for sure.
What can you do, though, to shut down explosive plays? And also, how frustrating was it in that Jacksonville game that the key run on that last drive was almost the same exact run that they blew the game open in week 3?
It wasn't the same exact run, but the ball, I think the explosions are something on defense that definitely I thought inhibited our overall output, and I think a lot of it has to do with how we played on the perimeter. We need to make sure in the secondary that we tackle better. I think it starts with tackling. We got to tackle better on the edges of our defense, and we got to make sure that we, put a roof on the deep part of the field. And so I think, those are going to be the areas that we really need to focus on, in the offseason, because that's where a lot of the, the big plays were on the perimeter in the run game.
You're a couple weeks removed from playing all your starters in Week 18 and Mike Williams going down with that back fracture. Have you rethought the decision at all? Any regrets from that decision and what happened as a result?
Yeah, Dan, I mean, you look at everything that you do, and I know that there's no one that felt worse about Mike Williams not being able to compete in the game than me. But going into that game, I think there are a couple things that, that I think from a thought process that, I want everyone to know is that you really got to establish the standard for your team, and how you're going to compete. And I think the way that I believe is that it's very hard to decide who's more valuable than the others, you know. And we weren't going to find out who won that Cincinnati-Baltimore game in time to have this, you know, line change of people, you know, in terms of the inactives and, you know, being able to switch out a bunch of guys. We weren't going to be able to do that. And so in preparation, knowing that, you have to get your team ready to play. You got to get your team ready to compete in the game from a mindset standpoint. And the people that I respect and the people that I, you know, learned from and then establishing the program here, you know, I think, you know, Tom Brady never missed a regular season game in 19 years in New England, you know, 19. And when you're talking about building a team, you want to make sure that everybody understands the value in that. And, you know, the 07 Giants team that had clinched the wild card that plays against the undefeated New England team, Tom Coughlin, you know, played his starters in that game. It was a whale of a game. They lost. They make it as the wild card. He got hugely criticized for it. But he was trying to do the same thing, and they end up going to win 3 playoff games on the road, and then they beat New England, you know, in the championship. And I think you got to decide how you're going to do things. And going into that game, we knew that, hey, we're going to start this game off with our players playing, and we're going to go out there and we're going to try and compete in the game and improve. And I think going into that game, there were a lot of other factors too in play in terms of Derwin and Joey. Derwin's out a month, Joey's out 3 months. We're trying to get them, you know, out there to get their legs to go play in a playoff game. Football isn't this game that, you know, you got to play in order to be good at it. And we just got a lot of confidence offensively in the Rams game. We felt like going into Denver, playing against a playoff caliber defense, that we would be able to benefit from that. And so all those factors are why we decided to do what we did. And it wouldn't have mattered if it were Mike or anybody else. I don't want to lose anybody on my team. And I think it's really hard for people to understand because if it would have been anyone else, I would have felt the same way. If it would have been Zion Johnson or Jamari Sawyer or Drew Tranquill or Asante Samuel, that would have been really difficult to overcome. If it would have been any of them. And I think that's the hard part of being an NFL coach is you got to make decisions like that. And, you know, it was tough to lose Mike in that game, but I think doing it over again, I'm proud of our process.
I get the momentum side of it. With you're talking about not being able to make line changes, like hypothetically, you could have had a contingency plan ready, where like if you're going to find out right about game time that this game is decided one way or another, you could have one plan if the Ravens win, one plan if the Bengals win. Mm-hmm. Why is that not?
We definitely, we had that contingency plan going into the game of, hey, as this game's going on, hey, who are trying to get out of there? And that's what we did in the second half is we phased our guys out of the plan, similar to what I told you guys during the week when I was in Chicago. We phased those guys out and tried to get those other guys playing time in the game, and that's why I say I think we executed our plan just how we wanted to.
Brandon, obviously, to end the season, you guys kind of hit that wall, losing against Jacksonville. What was your message on on Sunday to the guys before they headed out?
Yeah, Fernando, I think, I started at the end and then went back to the beginning, and I thought that the first half of that game, I think, showed our football team, what we're capable of. And then the second half, hey, that's the improvement, guys, and that we got to take full ownership. You don't want to be in denial of what happened. You don't want to look away and say, hey, we're moving on and we're not looking back. Hey, we got to take full responsibility for that. And because in all three phases, coaching, playing, it wasn't good enough, starting with me. And that's what I did in front of the team is that, hey, I didn't do well enough in the game, for our team. And then you go backwards from the beginning and I was really proud of our team that we put ourselves in that position to give us a chance to compete. I thought we went through a lot. I thought it took everybody in our locker room. I think when we look around, like, hey, we had a bunch of guys that joined up with us that weren't even on our team in training camp, weren't even on our team at the bye, that ended up playing meaningful snaps in the playoffs. And we were able to onboard these guys and get them in a position to play well enough for us to win that game. And so I think those signs tell you that we're headed in the right direction. And, the people that have been there, for 2 years that have been here know that the caliber of this locker room, the caliber of this tent moving forward is in a much better place than it was a year ago. And that's, the most important thing that you got to take away is that this group's good enough. And the way that we feel right now, that's a good thing. It's part of competition. When you feel like this, you're a lot closer than you think when you feel like this. Hey, you go get beat and no one's feeling that way. That means, hey, man, you're probably a lot farther away than then you want to be. And our guys didn't feel that way. They feel like, hey, we could beat anybody in the NFL. And, you know, to lose like that obviously was the toughest side of it.
You've mentioned a few times now about this idea of it's difficult to tell who's more valuable than others. I don't understand that because it doesn't seem that difficult on the outside. Like, we all know who the best players are.
Mm-hmm.
Like, can you explain a little more what you mean by that?
Yeah, I just think that in terms of playing in a game, to be able to organize that perfectly for people, you know, in terms of putting together a team like that in that game, I just think it's a lot more challenging than you make it think. And, you know, and again, it's not the preseason where you have 90 guys, where you have 90, you know, it doesn't work like that. And the timing of the game doesn't work like that. And again, we're going to learn a lot from everything that happened in the season. But, you know, I think when you're trying to build a football team, players respect, you know, when you're coming from the place that I was.
Brandon, you talked about creating more explosions in the passing game. Obviously, you know, a certain amount of that is related to scheme and identity, like you talked about, considering the moves you've made. But how much of it is personnel and not having like juice and speed at receiver that can get down the field? Like you talk about these offenses that you want to, you know, mirror. They all have that type of juice and speed at receiver to create those opportunities downfield. How much of it is personnel and how this roster was built from the skill position standpoint?
No, I mean, I think you know, because explosions, I mean, in the passing game, you know, just because you have speed doesn't mean that you're going to get to the deep part of the field. And I've told you, a lot of times when you have speed, you know where it's running. And so even if you're fast, like if we're waiting on you, it doesn't matter. So what you have to do is you have to have the mix of the run game and the pass game to create explosions. Because if people know that you're headed to the deep part of the field or you're trying to head there, you're not going to get there. You know, what you have to have is the balance, and you have to put the pressure on the defense in both places. And you have to put the pressure on them on the perimeter, on the interior, top shelf of the coverage, level 2, and that's what it takes to become an explosive team. It doesn't just mean you have to have a bunch of gas and a bunch of team speed. Now, if you can get team speed, that's obviously a big advantage. All right, because they can run faster to the places you're trying to get, whether that's the perimeter or the top shelf of the coverage. But, hey, you can get as many explosions just turning around and handing the ball to the running back, you know, and that's a way to get explosions, a point A to point B. So that's what we're trying to do, is try to create explosions in all those ways so that you become a really, really tough offense to defend. And the thing that I like the way we play is that a lot of people touch the ball. We had 6 guys or whatever have 500-plus yards receiving. And that's something that we need to build off of. And like I said, there's a lot of things offensively over the last 2 years that I'm extremely proud of, okay? But there's another level that I think that we can get to, and that's where we're headed with our process.
In terms of an offensive coordinator, how important would experience be instead of maybe a first-time coordinator? It seemed to work with you with Ryan Ficken, bringing in a guy with veteran and upgrading special teams. Well,
Ryan only had 1 year of special teams coordinator experience. He was an assistant for a long time. So, like I said, the coordinators in the league, to me, it doesn't matter how many years experience. As a coach, you know who can do it, who can lead, and who's got the chops, to put up product on the field that's going to be difficult to defend. And so that's why, you got to have an open mind. You got to, have a process where guys compete, and ultimately you make a decision. So I'm looking for the very best, person for the job, and I think that can come from a lot of different places, and I think I'm a good example of that.
Right. What kind of medical reports have you got on JC? Obviously, a serious injury, long road back. What's the early prognosis?
Just working his way back. It's going to be a process. It's a significant injury, so. He's working hard, just like all the rest of the guys.
Is Mike Davis going to need surgery on his pec?
I don't know that yet.
I just want to clarify, so you never thought your job was in danger?
No, Bill. No. I have a lot of confidence, Bill, in how we do things here and what we've been able to accomplish. And that's the truth. And everybody that's been around me on a day-to-day basis knows that. And I am aware of the speculation, because I have to be briefed of it, to be prepared for guys like you, and I do have a family, so I understand that, that cares about me, but I was not worried about that because I know what goes on here on a day-to-day basis, and I know what we have in our locker room. I know what's out on that field, and I'm excited to keep going.